A compelling detective story, a cloak and dagger action, and a romantic drama, all these stories were taken from real life. The history of Kazakhstan is inseparable from the world history. Reflections on history, our version.
Mongols and Kipchaks, the Steppe vendetta, the union of princes and Khans, the Battle of Calcutta, Western Mongolian campaign, the siege of Kiev. The walls were trembling from propellant guns, the ground shook from thousands of horse hooves, the clouds of burning Mongolian arrows destroyed almost all the wooden buildings, but the defenders of Kiev stood to death. The city of Yaroslav, so it was called, was captured in a heartbeat. Here's just one example. A settlement was discovered, more precisely the house of the artisan, who at that moment was apparently working. The tools, the horn, and the paints were on the display. The artisan managed to get out, but his house burned down instantly, and even his cat, whose scorched skeleton was found by archaeologists, did not manage to run out of the house. Few survivors were sold into slavery, and the city was burnt to the ground. The Battle of Calcutta, the siege of Kiev, and the Kipchak Khan Kotyan. Fatal chain of events, a cruel lesson in history, or the history of one revenge. The invasion of Genghis Khan begins in this period. Therefore, the Kipchaks dispersed in different parts of the world. Polovtsi came running to Kiev, asking for protection, explaining that they would die first, and then the Mongols would go after the Russians. After the Mongolian pogrom carried out by Batu, Kiev was burnt. Chapter 1. The Union of Princes and Khans. Without stopping for rest, only changing horses, the messenger rushed at full speed. The message was urgent. Kipchak Khan Kotyan asked for help from his son-in-law, the Prince of Galich, Nitslav. Our land has been taken away today, and yours will be taken away tomorrow. The period of the 20s of the 13th century is connected with the Mongol conquest, and accordingly with the great upheavals that touched many states of Eastern Europe and the North Black Sea area, including Polovtsians. Following the messenger, there were baggage trains with rich gifts. The Kipchak Khan was more than serious about the military alliance. Polovtsi sought protection from surrounding countries. They understood that they could not withstand the struggle against the Mongols. They were weak. They had no fortresses, no defense, and no forest around. Mstislav Udatny did not propose the request of his father-in-law. As they would say today, he organized a meeting at a high level, the Congress of the Russian Prince, Kiev. The spring of 1223, the council was held for a long time. Should they help their yesterday's enemy? Kipchaks, for a long time, were opponents and uncompromising enemies of Kievan Rus. In particular, they were able to achieve a number of victories over Russia. However, at that time, the relationship with the Polovtsians improved remarkably. They had cultural contacts, economic contacts. Also, kinship ties between the ancient Russian princes as well as nomadic people at that time already existed. Did Kipchak gifts or the gift of persuasion of Mstislav play its role is unknown, but the Prince's Council decided to attack the enemy in the Polovtsian territories. The united forces of the largest Russian princes descended down the Dnieper. It was planned to meet with the Polovtsians' Kotyan. The reconnaissance of the Genghis Khan troops worked well, apparently. The Mongolian ambassadors immediately arrived at the headquarters of the Russian and Kipchak forces. We have heard that you are going against us, listening to the Polovtsians, but we have not touched your land, nor your cities, nor your villages. We did not come for you, but came after slaves and horse grooms Polovtsians according to God's will. You take peace with us. If they run to you, drive them away and take their possessions. We have heard that they have done a great deal of bad things to you. We beat them for it too. Novgorod First Chronicle. According to one version, the message so offensive to the Kipchaks pursued one goal: to set up princes against them and thereby upset the military plans. But the peace proposal was not accepted, and later the princes were not forgiven for their friendship with the Kipchaks. Chapter 2: The Battle of Calcutta. This is more reconnaissance than the military operation of Genghis Khan. For the Russian cities, it really did not represent a danger. On that moment, the main goal was to get Kipchaks. Torn by numerous conquests, the Mongolian army needed resources. Fine warriors, accustomed to the hardship of nomadic life, the kinship factor. Better candidates than Polovtsy simply did not exist. The Kipchaks had never had such chronicles. They never had opportunities as Mongols had military organizational capabilities because the Kipchaks were always split into many tribes. For example, earlier another Khan, Yury Konchakovich, joined with the Alans, but the Mongols offered the Kipchaks peace, gifts, and related immunity. The split was introduced. The Kipchaks did not fight. After that, the Mongols defeated the Alans first and then attacked Yury Konchakovich. After the battle was lost, there was no more information about him. Accordingly, we can be sure that Yury Konchakovich had died. Therefore, this time Kiev princes did not believe the proposed peace. Moreover, the ambassadors were simply killed. Not forgiven crime according to Genghis Khan. Revenge, which means war, was inevitable. A number of cities were destroyed. Such demonstrative destruction was usually associated with ambassadorial stories. But they were confident in their abilities. According to some reports, the strength of the united army reached 100,000 soldiers. According to another version, there were 15 to 20 million of the Russian Kipchak fighters. The exact place of the battle is also unknown, 1223. It went down in history under a sonorous name, the Battle of Calcutta, and it started in a quite impressive way. The Tatars turned backwards, but then the Russian and the Kipchaks had a desire to attack them. They began to pursue them, but then the Tatars turned to Russians and Kipchaks. It was completely unexpected, because they considered themselves safe, being sure of their superiority over the Tatars. They did not manage to get ready for battle, as they were attacked with much superior forces. Both sides fought with unheard perseverance, and the battle between them lasted several days. Ibn al-Athir. But the army of Genghis Khan had advantages: a single leadership, well-developed tactics. The Russian princes quarreled with each other before the battle, and even the Polovtsy did not act in accordance with a plan. There was no unity inside the Kievan Rus itself. Well armed, better than Mongolian soldiers, the prince's squad suffered a crushing defeat. According to the chroniclers, only a tenth of Russian troops survived. Data on losses among Kipchaks is not given anywhere. It is known only that the initiators of this battle, Prince Mstislav and Khan Kotyan, escaped from the persecution of the Tatar-Mongol forces. The Mongolian troops survived the tactics of Russian squads and territories while they pursued the survivors. That's why the Battle of Calcutta is considered a turning point in history. The ensuing invasion was only a matter of time. Chapter 3: Western Mongolian Campaign. Boraldai, it is Burundai, quite usual residential patios, shops, and a local airport of the same name. It is interesting that according to one of the versions, this village in the Almaty region is named after a Mongolian commander, the same Burundai who commanded the troops during the siege of Kiev. A man of enormous height and Herculean physique, with a dark olive color face, dressed in the skin of a steppe tiger. It was a terrible, insanely courageous, and bloodthirsty warrior, Burunda Brigadir Ivan Franko. In historical sources, the name of Burunda first appears precisely in connection with the Western campaign. It It is interesting that earlier Juchi, the son of Genghis Khan, refused this military operation. The Mongols were preparing for it carefully. Losses in battles with the Polotsi, Alans, and Russian squads were filled in by detachments from conquered tribes. Mongolian events played this detonating role and contributed to the fact that the Kipchaks were forced to leave their territories. Contemporary researchers are still arguing about the size of the army of Genghis Khan's grandson Batu. There are different numbers from 40 to 120,000 soldiers. It was a paradox that a significant part of the Kipchaks fought on the side of the Mongols, because the Mongolian army at that moment was larger than the Kipchak army. And one more mystery of the Western campaign, whether it was the vengeance of the Kipchaks for years or simply a plan to expand the empire of Genghis Khan, is not clear. Many historians agree that it was most likely both. The reason for the conflict between Western Europe and Batu Khan was the migration of the Kipchaks to Hungary. According to another version, a new invasion of the Polovtsian steppes provoked the murder of the son of Kotyan, for which he avenged the tribes of Toksobiks. After that, they turned to the Tatar Mongols for help. Was it for real or not? But in 1237, Kotyan was defeated by Batu's troops. He fled to Hungary with his subjects. He didn't have enough of detachments of riders. Why did King Bela welcome these people? And Kotyan, because it was somewhere around 40,000 horsemen. But even before Hungary, they needed to clean the path. Ryazan, Suzdal, Moscow, almost all important cities were taken and destroyed. If there was resistance, the city was demolished. The population was destroyed. It was like intimidation, an act of intimidation. Epilogue: The Siege of Kiev. Kiev in the plans of the conquerors appeared before the Battle of Calcutta. There are many reasons. The capital, the richest city, besides, was seen in contacts with the Kipchaks. 1240. Batu sent Ming Han to inspect Kiev. He came and seeing Kiev was struck by its beauty and size. He sent messengers to Prince Mikhail of Chernigov, wishing to deceive him. But the prince killed the ambassadors and he fled from Kiev to the Hungarian land. And in Kiev ascended to the throne of Rostislav. But another prince, Daniil, opposed Rostislav and took him as a prisoner, and Kiev ordered to protect his prisoner, Dmitry. The Ipatiev Chronicle. Worn out by endless civil strife, Kiev was granted to the will of fate. Dmitry did not have a large army. Historians speak only about 1,000 defenders. And the fact that Prince Mikhail ordered to kill the Mongolian ambassadors did not leave any chance to people. The whole burden of defense fell on the shoulders of artisans, peasants, and merchants. It is interesting that during the invasions, these gates were destroyed from the inside. The troops of Khan Bati failed to enter the city through the Golden Gate. For the breakthrough, we preferred a more vulnerable place, near the Lyatsky Gate. Historians are still arguing about its exact location. However, the fact that they had the main blows does not mean that the enemy did not attack the main Golden Gates. The archaeologists still find traces of that battle. This cathedral was destroyed, the Tith church is here, and all the tombs are plundered. Here, the tomb of Yaroslav the Wise survived in Sofia of Kiev, which was not destroyed. Kiev literally opened the way to Europe. Only now, there was nobody to take revenge. When the horde of Kotyan went to Hungary, there was a conflict with local feudal lords who did not like the fact that Kipchaks were close to the royal court. They killed Kotyan. A huge army of Kotyan scattered throughout Europe. After the defeat of Hungary and then Bulgaria, which gave shelter to the Kipchaks, the task was accomplished. Polovtsi no longer represented a danger to the empire of Genghis Khan. And a new period began for Kievan Rus, which was later called the Tatar-Mongol yoke.